Creepy guy, basement windows, dead woman. When I was about 13 years old, this nice family moved out of their house in the Prescott Country Club, just down the block from my family. Eventually, a strange guy moved in, and the condition of the property rapidly deteriorated. The day he moved in, he had a large U-Haul type truck, which was fine, but the thing never left. It stayed parked in the driveway. It also had an extension cord running from the house out to the truck. I thought that was pretty weird. Eventually, there were paint cans all over the yard, random junk on the side of the house, a real mess. This was not welcome in this small community, but anybody who talked to the guy came away saying the dude was a weird and they needed to tread lightly, I guess. I'd mowed lawns and was hired to do our friend's lawn while they were on an extended vacation. They lived next to this weird guy. Every day, when I was sweating my ass off mowing, I could see this weirdo spying on me through his blinds in his living room. He wasn't very good at hiding it. Every single day. I kept looking back at him and giving him weird looks, hoping he'd knock it off and stop that. Well, fast forward 2 years and my family is watching the 5 p.m. news while we eat dinner, and they start reporting on a developing case where a woman's frozen body was found inside in a freezer inside a Ryder truck. They showed the house, and we all went silent and stopped chewing. I ran outside and looked down the street, and sure enough, every news agency in the state had a truck parked in the street. Satellite dishes extended, cops had everything cordoned off. This guy had abducted a 23-year-old woman on a Los Angeles freeway, raped, murdered, and then stored her dead body in a freezer, which eventually went into the truck and was driven to Arizona, where he moved next door to his mother, who of course had no idea. We were safe, so we thought. So, this story I've posted originally to Reddit No Sleep before I knew about this subreddit, but I can now spill all the actual details right here. It was 1992, and my mother and I lived in a small city in the very south of California. The area is known for golfing and vacationing, but not much else. The two of us lived in a very detached condo. It was pretty nice, inside of a country club. There were security guards who patrolled all of the time, and one in particular who was assigned to our area that I'll call Nick. Nick was an older man, maybe in his late 50s, dyed brown hair with a requisite mustache and a bit heavy set. You could tell that being a rent-a-cop was his thing. He loved carrying a taser, cuffs, and a baton, and having the authority to use them. So, Nick would come around each night and took an interest in my mother and myself because we were two lonely females living alone on the side of the property, that back then unfinished housing project. He had a golf cart, which I thought was a pretty cool thing, and on occasion, he would let me ride around with him on his earlier patrols. He was the night watch, I forgot to mention. So, one night, when he had come knocking at the door, my mother had invited him in, which was unusual, and he sat down in our living room. They chatted for a bit, and I was a 12-year-old girl who thought about all the cool stuff he must have seen, naive to the fullest. I had noticed that he wore a pinky ring that was distinct, and I asked about it. He stated that he was a member of an organization. I don't want to taint them here, so I won't mention which, and that he always wore that specific ring. The conversation only lasted at about 10 minutes, and I asked if I could join him for a ride as usual. He said yes, and my mom felt safe with him, so she let me go with him. He had never done anything weird, but in retrospect, he did say some stuff that now triggers the alarm bells inside me. He said one thing which will always stick with me. He mentioned that when he had his first car as a teenager, it was all the rage for the boys to place small mirrors on the stick shifts so that they could catch a glimpse of girls' dresses. I thought he was just warning me about that kind of stuff, like the evils of men and how I should be safe when I started dating, stuff like that. I didn't know that when men start talking about stuff like that, it's generally because they had done that or worse and they wanted to gauge your response. So, very important to this story is the layout of our condo. We had split master bedrooms and full glass walls on one side with sliding glass doors. One night, my mother was dead asleep, and for some reason I had gotten the heebie-jeebies. I don't know why. So I decided that I would stay up and lay in bed with her and our little dog. All of a sudden, I heard a sound. I listened more carefully and I heard the main sliding door in the living room start shifting open. It was a very distinct sound, and I was paralyzed with fear. Somehow I got up the courage to stand up and slowly and silently walk around the corner to peek into the living room. There stood a full figure of a man in the midst of walking into our house. I could barely move. I spit out, "Mom!" Immediately, my mother rolled over and asked what I wanted, and I informed her that there was a guy walking into her house. She sat straight up in bed and turned on the lights. She starts yelling and calls the security line and gets the operator, who says she'll send someone around immediately. About 3 minutes later, Nick shows up and, taser drawn, says he's gonna inspect the back of the condo, as that is where the intruder was. No luck. He finds nothing. After Nick left and had taken a statement and says he'll be calling the police, my mom and I walk out and look around. She sees wet footprints that lead from our back door straight to our front door. This is not good. I told my mother one other thing that occurred to me. When I saw the shadow of that man, what I also saw was a shining ring on his hand as he grasped the door. It had to be Nick. My mother, the next day, contacted the owner of the security company and told him the whole entire story. Long and short of it was they set up a sting. The owner, a highly trained security expert, hid in a condo that was straight across from ours, which he could see into ours from. He sat there and waited and waited. All of a sudden, guess who walks around the corner and hides in the bushes to watch my mother and I? Nick, of course. So the boss man calls my mother and tells her to hang up the phone and to place it on speakerphone, so it looks like she's not talking to anyone. He wanted to see if he could get Nick to move around and follow us as we moved around the house, etc. Sure enough, he did, and he got pictures too. The next day, Nick was fired and had charges brought up. He had been watching us for months. Just knowing that I had been alone with this sicko made my stomach turn, and I couldn't sleep alone in that house until we moved. I get really nervous on the phone. Writing this on my cell phone, so I'll apologize in advance for any errors. I'm a 24-year-old female now. This happened when I was around 16 to 17 years young. My friends and I would go to this country dance club called the Country Barn, way out down a back road, which was somewhat popular considering I'm from a small town. The Country Barn was more populated with adults trying to relive their glory days though. Anyways, my friends and I would always go there just to dance, act goofy, play pool, and just have fun. When slow songs would come on, all the guys would ask all the ladies for a dance. It was pretty adorable. It was locally owned by an older couple who were extremely nice and good Christians. They had a son who was about 26 years old. If I remember correctly, his name was David. He would never ask anyone to dance and would occasionally play with the band playing his guitar. After about 5 visits to the Country Barn, my friends and I noticed that David would watch our group dance. Near the end of the night, at the last slow song, David approached me and asked for the last dance. My friends were all giggling because they thought David was the cutest thing they'd ever seen, so I accepted. Before I left, he asked me if he could call me, so I gave him my number. Stupid me. About a week later, my best friend Bethany and I are at my house, and it's around 3 a.m. in the morning. We were having a sleepover and just talking when my cell phone rings. Odd enough at 3 a.m., but I answer it anyways. Hello? Nothing, so I hang up. About another 20 minutes later, I get another call, so I answered it again. Hello? Nothing. Hello? I said again. Then I could hear breathing. I look at my friend and put it on speaker and say, "Hello, I can hear you breathing?" And then Bethany and I both hear a moan. Disgusted, I hung up. Over the course of the next 2 weeks, I keep getting calls or random voicemails like that and just ignored it out of disgust, hoping they'll eventually just stop. That weekend, my friends and I go to the Country Barn to have fun again. David sees us come in and smiles and walks towards us. As soon as he approaches us, he smiles and says, "Hey, Tiffany, I've enjoyed talking to you on the phone." Weird. I haven't talked to David on the phone, and I tell him so. I've never talked to him. "No, you have. I just don't say much because I get nervous on the phone. Anyways, I love the sound of your voice though." Okay, so I say, "That's been you calling me from 3 to 7 a.m. in the morning?" And he smiles and nods like it's the most normal thing ever. At this point, my friends are walking to the pool table because they're feeling kinda, awkward. "Thanks, ladies, I'm feeling peachy right now, don't worry." So I politely tell him, "David, I don't think we should talk on the phone anymore. It makes me uncomfortable." All of a sudden, he looks extremely pissed off and walks away while saying, "Well, fuck you then, bitch!" Okay. That's enough Country Barn for the rest of my life. So I round up the ladies and take them all home but Bethany. Bethany practically lived at my house back then. School nights and weekends, she was always there. About 4 nights after Country Barn incident, on a Wednesday, we were getting ready for sleep since we had school in the morning. After I turn my bedroom light off and crawl in bed, or jump in is more like considering I'm terrified of the dark, my phone rings again, so I answer it as usual with a hello. Nothing, but the number was familiar as my creepy caller David, so I put it on speaker and say, "David, this isn't funny, please stop calling me." And then Bethany and I both look at each other with disgust as we hear a woman moaning, saying things like, "Oh, fuck me harder. "Oh, David. Ew." So I hang up and try my best to sleep. Calls like that happen nearly every weekend for about 4 weeks in a row. I stupidly ignore them yet again, hoping they'll stop on their own. About 3 weeks after that last call, my friends are begging me to take them back to the country barn. I obviously said no multiple times, but gave in once Bethany suggested that, since the call stopped, David must be out of town, right? Teenage logic, it's the best. So, as we get to the country barn, there's no sign of David at all. Great. Awesome. So my friends and I play a game of pool. It was all so relaxing. As we're finishing up, David walks in with a very petite girl who looks like she's never seen a cheeseburger in her life. Poor girl also had a bruised cheek and a black eye as well. My friends and I just decide to avoid him the rest of the night, and that we should leave if he approached us again. Halfway through the night, the girl who came in with David approaches me as I'm getting a Mountain Dew from the concession stand. "Hey, I'm Brittany." "Hi there, I'm Tiffany." "I know. David has told me all about you. He's mine now, so stay away from him. And stop trying to break us up or I'll beat your ugly ass, bitch." This did not set well with me for multiple reasons. One, she looks like she's 10 years old now that she's closer. Two, I haven't been trying to do anything involving David. And three, I don't take well being threatened. So I replied, "I never talked to David. He's too old for me, and he's batshit crazy in my opinion, okay?" "Yeah, well, I'm 14 and gave him my virginity, so I'll be damned if some old woman will take him away from me." "I'm only 16 to 17, okay?" So I say, "Well, it looks like you're also batshit crazy as well. Have a nice life." And walked away to round up my girls and get the hell out of there. As we're walking to my car, David runs out and says, "Tiffany, baby, why are you leaving? Brittany's just jealous because I love you more. Just ignore her, sweetheart." Yuck. Okay, just yuck. I get in my car, lock the doors, and leave. When I get home, I tell my dad everything. He's a little pissed at me for talking to a 26-year-old guy, but more pissed off at David and worried for the crazy little 14-year-old girl. Turns out, my dad knew the owners pretty well and went to their house to have a talk with them. David had been living in one of their rental homes for a few months, and a runaway, Tiffany, was living in the basement without anyone's knowledge but David. David's family paid the little girl's mother a whole bunch of money to keep it quiet, which she accepted, I suppose, since I've never seen any news articles about it. I would be out for blood personally if someone hit my child and slept with them, morons, right? David's father promised my dad he would take care of it, and it wouldn't happen again. My dad figures David will get his ass beat and possibly go to jail, and that'll be the end of it. Wrong. David got to go to Europe for a year on mommy and daddy's dime, so he wouldn't cause any more trouble as per se. It's been so long since then, I don't know where David is now, and simply, I don't care. My number was changed a week later at incident. I don't go to the country barn anymore, and neither do my friends or anyone else that my dad nor I tell the story to.